Welcome to the Building Wealth with No Borders podcast with me, Lamide Elizabeth, where I'll be bringing you guests from around the world to talk about their strategies for building wealth. And today we are in London with serial property investor and award-winning entrepreneur, founder of Propelle, Ayesha Ofori. Yay!
Thank you for having me.
I am super excited to have you on my channel. I think that I've definitely spoken about you multiple times before. If anyone has bought any of my courses and stuff, I would have either spoken about Ayesha or Ayesha had come and you would have seen her talk before. So I'm super excited to kind of delve into this conversation. Before we get started, can you introduce yourself? Yeah. And also I want you to get deep into the education and the career and stuff, because I feel like you have solid credentials.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. So I am Ayesha Ofori. As you said, I am the founder and CEO of Propelle. I am a Londoner, in fact, Northwest Londoner through and through. And in terms of my background, starting at the very beginning, I have a master's degree in physics from Imperial College London.
Can you go before that? Can you start GCSEs?
Even before that, yeah. Oh, GCSEs, oh my gosh. Now I got to really get my brain going. You can tell my age because I got to really think about it. Okay, GCSEs. So I went to a school called Southampton High School in Hampstead. So it's a pretty good school, arguably one of the best in London. And for GCSEs, I got 10 A stars and an A.
Wow.
And I remember my mum was just focused on that A. But it's not an A star. And also it was in English. So she's like, how can you be English and not get an A star?
Was it English language?
I think it was literature. I got an A star in English language, but in English literature, that's where you have to read all the books.
I had one of my A's, but the other ones were the other A's that I got were for additional maths and stuff, but the one A was in I think it was English something that I just couldn't get.
Same with me. My one A was in English, and I remember my mum was like, but you're English. My mum was on it when it came to education because one of her early jobs was what was called an education welfare officer back in the day. So she used to go into schools and help kids that were struggling or troubled, because obviously they were being disruptive to the rest of the class, but also to get them the help that they need. So I think she saw really early on just the importance and the power of education. And she kind of made a decision that she was going to do whatever she needed to do to make sure that my sister and I had good educations. And she absolutely nailed it. She worked multiple jobs to be able to afford for me to have tutors. I started going to private school when I was 7, which she initially paid for. And then obviously going to Southampton as well. All of that is down to my mum and the fact that she saw that actually education was so important. I think what she potentially didn't realize, but that what I see now is education, having a good education can help you transcend different social groups. I would say that my family was working class. My mum was a single mum. She worked really hard. But I was able to transcend barriers and to get into different social circles and things purely based on the education that I had and the school that I went to, and then later the university that I went to. And that has pretty much been the same throughout my life, even in terms of then the companies that I went to work at. And even now I say the network that I have is because of those places that I've been, and I wouldn't have been able to get into those places if I hadn't have had the education that I had. So it's all down to her.
Okay, so GCSEs then?
So GCSEs, then I stayed at Southampton. I did my A-levels. I did double maths, physics, chemistry, and French.
Oh my God.
I'm a math person. So double maths, physics, chemistry, and French. So I love math. Numbers is my thing. And then I just chucked French in because I was like, I can't just do maths and science.
French?
I could. And then I took courses at university as well. And then I just haven't spoken it in about 20 years. So I can speak French, but I'd say I probably speak like a 5-year-old just because I haven't practiced. But back then I could read, we were reading novels in French and writing about them and things like that. So yeah, at one point my brain could do a lot. Now the other day I was looking through some of my physics notes, and I was looking at it, and it was literally just equations. I'm like, these aren't even words. I'm like, what does this mean? I'm like, I wrote this. I'm like, I am so impressed.
First of all, why do you still have that?
Oh, I cling on to these things.
Oh.
I'm actually having to get rid of some of it now because I'm running out of space. We just don't have it. And my husband is the same. Like, I'm going through some of his old stuff. I'm like, yeah, we really got to throw some of this stuff out. But for me, just looking at it, I'm like, I am so impressed with myself.
Well, what do you have? Like your exam notes or?
I have, and also my mum. My mum's kept everything. She's got my milk teeth that fell out.
What?
My mum has kept everything. She's got like my first note to Santa.
Oh my gosh.
She's kept everything. And I think part of that has stayed with me. So I have like old exercise books from schools. I've got my university thesis. And sometimes you just look through and it kind of just, I don't know, it's like nostalgia. It brings you back, but I have to get rid of it because we're running out of space. But yeah, so did a physics degree at Imperial. And I chose physics because I wanted to do something obviously maths related. And to me, I thought, okay, physics is applied maths. It's like maths in a useful way. Little did I know what physics was about. And then we got in and it's all abstract about the universe and particles and whatnot. And I'm like, yeah, this isn't really practical, but never mind. But I really enjoyed it. And I actually wanted to do a PhD. And then it was my mum who said to me, she's just like, go and get a job. She's like, what is all this studying? You need to go and earn money. She's like, you took out a student loan. I think at the time I took out about, I don't know, £15,000 student loan. And she was horrified. She was like, you took out a £15,000 loan. And back then that was a lot of money and a big deal. I'd never really worked. I did have a job for like a few months because again, mum was like, go and get a job. She's like, you need to start making money to be able to pay off this loan. So I went to Peter Jones in Sloane Square, so it's the equivalent of John Lewis. And I remember I was a sales assistant in their kitchenware department. I lasted about 3 months. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Standing on your feet all day, just aligning the shelves, making sure everything's straight. Like in my area, I remember I tidied everything, dusted everything, 20 minutes, I'm done. And I went to my manager, I'm like, I'm done. What do I do now? She's like, now you wait. I'm like, wait for what? She's like, you wait for customers. I'm like, I just have to stand here all day and wait. And so for me, I was like, yeah, retail is not for me. I am going to go to uni. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to get a job where I can sit down.
No, honestly, working retail jobs will make you think I need to get my life together, especially when you have like those managers who are like, you know, a lot older and it's like, it's their whole life and they want you to make it your whole life. I'm like, no. Let me get myself together because I cannot be doing this after I graduate. So yeah, relatable.
Honestly, that 3-month period motivated me. I am like, I'm going to finish my degree. I'm going to do well and I'm going to get a corporate job because I need a desk.
I just need to sit. I remember thinking,
I can't be standing. Yeah, same. I can't stand all day. I take my hat off to people who work in retail sales. I don't know how they do it. I cannot stand all day.
Yeah.
So yeah, that gave me a bit of motivation. And then after uni, I went to Morgan Stanley, investment banking. I had no idea what an investment bank was, had no clue. I didn't know like how they differed from like HSBC, my local high street branch. All I knew was they paid well. They seemed to want physicists and mathematicians. So I'm like, cool, I'll go with that. They said that they'll teach me everything that I'll need to know. So I was like, okay, amazing. I'm going to get paid well. Like mum's going to be really happy. Like that was my motivating thing. They're going to pay me so I can pay off my loans and mum will be happy. And then what did I do? So joined Morgan Stanley pre-financial crisis, so giving my age away.
Well, you did physics at Imperial. You say that?
Yeah, physics at Imperial.
Yeah.
Then joined Morgan Stanley pre-2008. Then the financial crisis happened and we were in the building next door to Lehman Brothers, like literally. It was mad. It was a crazy time.
Really?
Just being on the floor and just watching everything fall apart around you. It was mental.
As in like visually?
Yeah, like even just seeing, you know, people, the stresses of the situation. Security would march in and walk like whole teams of people out. They're not even allowed to get any of their personal belongings. People crying. It was nuts.
Really?
It was mental. It was really, really mental. And I just remember at the time being like, yeah, this is not a good place to be right now. So then I decided I actually did a little stint at another firm because I was like, okay, maybe it's just the firm. And then I went to another firm. I was like, no, it's clearly the industry. Just at this time, it doesn't make sense to be in financial services. So then I went to do an MBA. So I went to London Business School, did the 2-year MBA program, finished my MBA at Columbia Business School in New York because they have a program, and MBA, like phenomenal. Like two of the best years of my life.
Yeah, my friend's at HBS at the moment. I'm just looking at her stories. I'm like, this looks so much fun. Obviously, you have to work really hard.
Yeah.
But then like they bring in like so many cool people to talk to you guys. They travel. I'm like, damn, this looks fun.
So I guess there are a few points in my life that I'd say were sort of instrumental. MBA is one of those for sure.
But why?
It completely changed my outlook on the world, but also on myself. So before I'd done the MBA, I had met people who had done MBAs, usually Americans who had gone to HBS or Stanford. And I would usually be like, oh God, those like arrogant MBAs, like so full of themselves, like oh, whatever. But then having done the MBA myself, I'm like, actually, it's not arrogance. Like you get that self-belief. You literally feel like you can change the world.
But you didn't think you had that from physics, from working at MS?
No, why? Because I'm just I was like, I'm just a girl from North London. Okay, yes, I've worked really hard and I, got a physics degree and I've done this, but I'm still me. I still live at home with my mum and my sister, and I still have to clean on Saturdays because mum forces me to. To me, it was just me. Like, I can't run companies or change the world. That's what other people do. But when I went to business school, for me, it helped me to see that I do have that. I can be that person. I can be the person that changes the world either through a company or creating something new. It gives you that belief in yourself, but also it opens you up to a network. And so what I've realized is pretty much anything in life is possible. It's about, you first of all have to believe in yourself. You have to have the right network of people that can help you. And then it's about execution. But there's very little that's not possible. You just have to believe you can do it and find the right people to help you get it done. And this is like goes back to my earlier point about the network that I have. I wouldn't have the network that I have if I hadn't have been to those various institutions and places. So I guess I do appreciate that I am lucky to have been there, but I got there through hard work. Like, it wasn't gifted to me. I didn't come from a wealthy family.
Yeah. Love the journey. I think the reason why I wanted you to kind of like go into all the detail is to just let people know that you're a smart woman, that you know, because sometimes like, there's always that one troll that will be like, oh, you're the diversity hire, or like, oh, just like dumb stuff like that, especially when they see women, or when they see, women of like minority ethnic background who are doing well. They always try to put it to like, they always try to make themselves feel better by making it about something else. Whereas like, you could have never done physics at Imperial. You could have never done that. Okay.
No, I worked hard. But also something that I've learned about myself as well is my brain is just a bit different to a lot of people's. It can process very quickly. I pick things up very quickly. I learn very fast. And it's funny because when I was growing up, I assumed that everyone was the same. And I distinctly remember this chemistry lesson at school. And the teacher explained like a certain concept, I think for about the 5th time. And I just lost my patience. And I was like, are you kidding me? You're going to go through this thing again? Like, we get it. Move on. And I mean, then I got in trouble and he kind of pulled me aside. And he's like, Ayesha, not everyone's brain works like yours. Most of the class are still stuck on this concept. So we're going to go through it until they get it. And then I remember being like, seriously? They don't get it? Like, really? And I remember saying, you don't get it? And she's like, no. I was like, oh. And then I was like, wow, okay, so it's me. And again, like, my school used to put me forward for like extra competitions like physics Olympiad and maths Olympiad, where you'd go and compete with like the top, say, 1% across the country. It didn't seem unusual to me at the time. I was just like, oh yeah, you want me to do this thing? Okay, cool. Yeah, I can do it. And for me, like, looking at the equations and stuff, it just comes easy to me. My brain can do it. And as I said, I didn't realize until a lot later that it was me, that, I am smart, I am intelligent, and on top of that, I work hard, which means I can go even further.
I love that. Can you talk about the story of how you decided to get started in property investing? Yeah. So I remember you told me something about like your colleague. So
yeah, it's so funny. I actually saw her this weekend because it's her birthday. So she and I used to work together. And we had a similar role, started at the same time. So I knew our base salaries were about the same. And she comes into work one day with a brand new Rolex. And I was like, where did you get that? She's like, what do you mean? I bought it. I was like, how? I was like, I know you don't have that much excess cash just lying around. I know how much you earn. And I also know the lifestyle you have. So the thing about bankers is we are paid well, like relatively speaking, but we also have expensive lifestyles. And I think it's also because it's a bit of like keeping up with the Joneses. If you're walking around the floor and everyone's in Louboutins with Hermes bags and whatever, like you want to fit in, so you do the same. So I'm like, I know you spend all your money on this stuff. So where are you getting the money for that? She's like, property. And I was like, what do you mean property? She's like, yeah, I got a property portfolio. And I was like, you have to tell me more. Like, if that's what it can allow you to do, then I need to get into it too. But she was like, oh no, you've missed the boat. Like, the property market's tanking. Like, it was good like ages ago. So she's like, there's no point. And I just felt that she just didn't want to share or help me, because I was like, oh, it doesn't matter even if you think that it's tanked, like I still want to know. And she just wasn't keen. So then I was just like, sod it, I'll teach myself. Like, how hard can it be? And I remember I just started researching. Like initially like buy-to-lets and very, what I sort of say, like entry level friendly strategies. And I started with Crossrail. I sort of said, okay, right, if I'm going to invest in an area, there needs to be a reason why house prices like might go up over time. And usually like it's transportation play, or the local council's getting a lot of money, or there needs to be some kind of like regeneration in the area. So I was like, right, Crossrail's a good one. Let me have a look at the Crossrail stations and see which areas I think property prices like might go up a lot. And it was really easy. So I got out a Crossrail map. I crossed out the middle because like, okay, that's zone 1, can't afford anything there. So now I was looking at the 2 edges. And then I ended up picking like Woolwich and Abbey Wood. Just because I was like, oh, that doesn't seem too far from where I live. Like that side is, yeah, that's going to take me much longer to get to. And then I remember like going to Woolwich, sort of looking around, and there was this big like Berkeley development area on one side of the road, and they were building like thousands of like top end apartments. And then on the other side of the road, you had like a marketplace, you know, where, like back in the day you can go buy leggings for like £1.50 and things like that. Like places, my grandma loved markets like that. And I remember thinking, this is odd. How can you have high-end apartments on one side of the road, but then a market like that on the other side of the road? I'm like, it just doesn't work. Clearly, like everything over here has to go. And then I thought, okay, then other parts of this area are going to have to be gentrified as well. So what I started to do was to buy existing flats, because I felt that those prices would go up. And I did buy one of the new builds. And then I found something else really interesting. So there was literally a road where that separated 2 postcodes. So you literally cross the road, you're on this side and you're in like, I think it was SE28. And then you stand on this side of the road and you're in like SE something else. And so the values of the properties would change because of the postcode. I'm like, this is crazy. No one cares about the postcode. Like a flat on that side of the road versus a flat on this side of the road is exactly the same. But there was actually like a price differential. So what I started to do was to buy some of those flats, knowing that the regeneration in the area would push everything up. And that's where I started. And I was absolutely right. Like they just kept going up and up and up. And the more flats that came on the market, the more I bought. And it's funny because people always say, okay, but if the prices are going up and then you're buying at a higher price, like that isn't good. I'm like, but it's great for the flats that I already own, because now they're going up in value. And then at some point I can remortgage those and take some money out and keep recycling it. And you just keep going. And that's what I did. And I mean, eventually then I got into different property strategies as well, because I think just my personality, I always want to do more, do better. So when I get to a certain point, I push myself further. And I did the same with property. So then I started to look at refurbishments, gone into developments, commercial conversions, and all of that stuff, and build up a portfolio with my husband that is literally funding our lives right now. I'm a startup founder. Like I run Propelle. I pay myself peanuts. My salary doesn't even cover how much I pay the nanny to look after my kids. It's ridiculous. My husband is also running his own startup now, paying himself peanuts. And people are always like, how the hell are you guys doing this? The property portfolio, if we didn't have that income and that money coming in, we wouldn't be able to do this. Like, how would I be able to afford our lifestyle on a tiny little salary that I'm paying myself from Propelle? It just wouldn't be possible.
Do you think your portfolio now is bigger than the person who didn't want to bring you in?
Potentially. Because I was having a chat with her recently, and she also went into a startup, which she's recently left, and now she's gone and got a job. And I was like, why? Like, just, you got to keep pushing. You got to keep pushing. She's like, no, I need money to live. And I'm like, but you have property. She's like, yeah, but it's not enough. I don't know whether her like lifestyle is just very different to mine, but she's also got kids as well. So I assume that ours is now bigger because we can still live off ours, whereas she had to go back and get a job.
That's interesting. On that then, because some people say that property should only be used for wealth preservation as opposed to wealth creation. What would you say to that?
It can be used for both. It's the type of property you buy. It will depend on the area that you're looking in. It depends on, are you looking for property that you're focusing on income? Are you focusing on capital appreciation? Like, for example, when I was at Goldman, I had clients who would use properties as bank accounts. They would have so much cash that they can't actually put it in the bank because there is a certain point where you have too much money. The bank will actually charge you to hold your cash. So they're like, right, I can't put the money in the bank, so we'll just buy houses, and the money will effectively sit in the houses. So that's what they did.
So preservation, creation, both. And what if you wanted to use it for wealth creation? What are your tips?
So you can absolutely use it for both wealth creation and wealth preservation. I'd say if you're going for wealth creation, then you're typically going to favor capital appreciation because you want to build up wealth over the long term. And one of the great things about property, again, caveat, you got to buy in the right area, etc., is I think there's like a very high level rule that like every 10 years you kind of double your money sort of thing. So for me, like my property portfolio is my pension. I don't have a SIP, like a self-invested pension. I think I've got tiny little pensions somewhere from when I used to work at companies, but it's not going to be anywhere near enough to live on. So for me, my property portfolio is my pension, and majority of the property that I say it's about 50-50 now, is capital appreciation. So it's for the long term. The rental yields aren't going to be great, but I don't care because I'm not looking for those particular properties to give me income. I just want them to go up in value so that in X years' time, in the future when I need it, I can release the money either by remortgaging or selling. And then I'd say 50% of the portfolio probably are income plays where I'm looking more at the rental yield and I'm prioritizing for that because I need that money to live right now. But again, if I had a job somewhere and I was earning a decent salary, then I wouldn't even need the income from property. And then I'd probably look more to have it all focused more towards capital appreciation. In terms of wealth preservation, I think if you're just trying to preserve, then I don't think it matters whether you go for income plays or capital appreciation plays, because if you get income, you can just recycle it back in.
Yeah.
So I'd say for wealth preservation, it doesn't matter. You can look at both types of properties. For wealth creation, I would go for the ones that have the capital appreciation play. So you're trying to maximize the long-term increase in value versus what you're going to get every month.
When you're looking at like properties for the yield play or the income play, what yields are you looking at versus if you're like, what would be an okay yield if you're looking at it from an income play?
If you're purely focusing on an income play, then you've got to factor in things like obviously all the costs that you have to pay on a monthly basis, particularly if somebody else is managing the property for you. You've got to factor in inflation. So for me, like double digits, you need to be starting at a double digit sort of, income yield.
Net or gross?
For me, gross.
Okay.
But then when I take everything out, I still want to end up, if I can, sort of low double digits.
Okay.
I think times change, and sometimes the market is good and sometimes the market is bad. So sometimes once you've taken out all the costs and you're looking at a net basis, it can fall into like single digits, but then I'd be looking at high single digits.
Yeah.
Ideally double digits, but even if I am around 8, 9, etc., that's still good. Okay. But typically when you have properties like that, the capital appreciation isn't necessarily great. I always find that you have to focus on one or the other. Very rarely do you find a property that knocks the ball out the park on both.
Okay, so having said that, if I'm correct, you still rent, right?
Yeah.
Which is, for a lot of people, would be like, what? How can you have this property portfolio and you're still renting? So
yeah.
Is renting just throwing away money? How come you're just throwing away money on rent?
According to my mum, it is. She's like, I don't believe it. You got 2 kids and you're doing this, and you're still renting. You're like, you got to settle down. You got to get a house. I'm like, Mum, I have houses, quite a lot of them. Like, I just don't happen to live in them. So our situation was, when we moved into our area, we wanted to buy, but I was pregnant with my first daughter. And I don't know why, maybe it was the hormones, but in my head, I was like, right, we can find this area. I can start looking at houses. I can find something, renovate it, and get it all ready before the baby comes. I had about 5 weeks to go before the baby was coming. And my husband said to me at the time, he's like, with all the best will in the world, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So stop looking for something to buy. Just find something to rent temporarily. We can move in. And once you've like settled down with the baby, then you can start looking for something to buy and you can buy something. My daughter's going to be 8. So 8 years later, we're still there. But it's a combination of things. First of all, we love where we are. We have a massive garden. We are, it takes me 15 minutes door to door to get from my house to Bond Street. Like, we're very central. To have so much space and such a big garden so central is really rare. So anything that I move to needs to match up on an equivalent basis or I'm not going. And also, at the time we were looking to buy, house prices were actually falling. So it didn't make sense to buy. So, for example, let's say I did find a house at that time. If I had bought it, then I would have locked in at that price. Whereas, 6 months later, the price would have been lower. So why would I have locked in a depreciating asset where the mortgage is same as my rent? It just didn't make any sense. If you think about it, my income outflow would be the same. Whether it goes to my landlord or it goes to a mortgage provider, it's the same. It's cash out to me. But then the actual asset was depreciating. So I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. So it's just not the point to buy right now. So I'll just buy later. And then I just got busy. And it wasn't a priority. There was a house that came up on our road, I think around COVID time or just before. I kick myself. I should have bought it. I thought about it. I went to see it. The reason I didn't buy it was because we have additional properties. We pay the higher rate of stamp duty.
Oh, God, yeah.
And when I calculated the stamp duty on this property, it was just shy of £1 million.
Wait, what was the stamp duty?
Stamp duty, yes. And so I was just like, I can't pay that much money in tax.
Oh, hell no.
I can't. It's the principle. Like, for me, I'm just like, that money doesn't even go into the house. It doesn't go into refurb. It goes to the tax man. I'm just like, no, it's too much. It's too much to pay on tax. And so we didn't do it. I do regret it because it has gone up massively in value. And that hit I would have taken in tax would have been nothing versus where it is now. So for me, that was a real missed opportunity. It's literally a couple doors down from where we are. And I'm like, I drive past it like every day. Oh, that should have been our house. I'm like, damn it, that was our house.
If another one comes out, are you getting it?
100%.
Yeah.
Like, I am looking actively in the area. I'd say the only thing is, like, my standards keep getting higher and higher. And so now, like, I wander around the area and I look at all these different houses, and like every day, like my husband's like, where are you going? I'm like, oh, I'm just going to have a walk. I'm going to Primrose Hill. I'm just going to have a little look. And then I come back and I'm like, oh, this house. He's like,
I thought you were going for a walk.
Yeah. And are you out of your mind? He's like, we can't afford that. I'm like, yet. Manifesting. You wait, it's coming.
Oh, I love that. Okay, I want to talk a bit more about your time in investment banking because obviously a lot of people in banking, I remember, like, I mentioned this before, but when I did my internship, when I first got my internship in investment banking, I thought that, like, I was like, I'm there now. Like, I've actually made it. I was like, oh my God, everyone around me is going to be super wealthy or whatever. And I remember we had, like, you have the socials when you're doing the internships with, like, and then, like, you have these socials for the interns, and then obviously they bring in all, like, the VPs or the managers or whatever. And then by the end of the night, they just start having their own conversations. They forget that the interns are there, and they just start, like, drinking and whatever. And they were talking about money, and they were complaining, and they were like, oh, like, we just not enough money, like, we're not earning enough money, and like, oh no, like, the people at the hedge funds, they're making the money, I want to be with the hedge funds or whatever. And I was like, oh my God, this is so interesting, because to the outside world and to the average person, they see people who work in investment banking and people who are earning 6 figures or whatever, and they're like, oh my God, you guys are making so much money. But those people are like, I can barely even afford, like, my lifestyle, right? So why is it that, from the habits that you've seen with people who are making a lot of money, why is it that their income doesn't translate into wealth, basically?
Lifestyle creep. So what you've just described is classic banker situation. So from the outside, everyone thinks it's this shiny, amazing thing. And when I get into banking, like, I've made it. And I was one of them. Before business school, if you'd asked me like what career success was for me, I would have said something like partner at Goldman Sachs. Now, don't get me wrong. Some of my friends are partners at Goldman Sachs and they're very happy. But for me personally, once I had got in, and after a few years, you kind of figure things out. What I realized is it's actually only a tiny handful of people who actually make significant wealth. Majority of other people are paid well, but they also have very expensive lifestyles. And one of the things that happened around the time that I left, I spoke to one of my bosses at the time, and I said to him, you know, you've been here 25 years. Tell me what you love about it. Because in my mind, I was sort of going through that mental process of, I'm going to leave. I'm going to go start my own thing, do something else. But you do sort of doubt yourself sometimes, and you don't want to make the wrong decision. And one thing Goldman is very good at is making you feel part of them. And so you, like, your identity almost gets tied up in it as well. So for me, leaving Goldman, it was almost like, oh my gosh, if I leave, like, who am I? What am I without Goldman Sachs? Like, I'm going to be nothing. Like, I can't leave. I have to stay. And so you go through all of this sort of these thought processes. So I remember going to this guy and I'm like, okay, he's been here 25 years. There's clearly something he loves about it. He's going to tell me, and then, you know, that will help. So I was like, yeah, why are you still here? And he's like, I have a wife who doesn't work. I've got 3 kids in private schools and I've got 2 mortgages. Where am I supposed to go? I said, I said, I see. And I remember thinking on the way home, I don't want to be him. He's stuck. Not everyone is like that. I'm sure there are some people who genuinely love their jobs, but there are also a large number of people who get stuck in careers. It could be banking, it could be other careers, but who get stuck and they can't leave because they need to earn a certain amount of money just to keep their lifestyle going. And if they left, then it would all fall apart. They can't pay their mortgages. They can't pay the school fees. They can't, in his case, fund his wife. And I sort of said to myself, oh my gosh, like, to be here, to work as hard as we do, to go through everything, to end up like that, like 20 years from now, no thank you.
Yeah. What are the like middle income traps?
Keeping up with the Joneses, thinking you need to have that handbag, those shoes, that jewelry, that Rolex watch, that house or those houses, the multiple holidays every year, the ski trips, the nice summer holidays. If you do all of those things, it costs a lot. Like, I remember just sometimes on the floor, we talk about the different holidays and the resorts that we would go to, and we'd all go to the same resorts because somebody would mention, oh yeah, I went here. Like, I think there was one, it just sticks in my head, called Ziggy Bay. And I remember looking it up and I'm like, oh yeah, it looks beautiful. And I'm like, yeah, we should go there. And then everyone goes to these places. But then when you look at the amount that it costs, like, it's insane. Like, even there was another place that everyone used to go to in Greece. And it's like 15, 20 grand for 2 weeks. Like, it's mad. But you sometimes feel like everyone's doing it. Like, that's kind of what you have to do. And I'm at a certain point, I'm like, but what's the point? If you're doing these things, but there's not much left over afterwards. And then if you are one of the people where you would prefer to be doing something else, but you stay because that's the sort of lifestyle that you become accustomed to. I know it sounds a lot to say it's sad because some people are going to be like, that's insane. How can you be sad if you're going on those types of holidays and things? But it's not as happy and amazing as some people make it out to be. And I think for me, I don't know, I've evolved over the years. I definitely used to be someone who liked the nice holidays and the nice things. Now it just doesn't bother me. Like, I have handbags that I don't use. They're like in my bedroom, in their dust bags, and I just don't use them. Like, once we thought that we had been burgled, and my husband was like, oh my gosh, like, we've got to rush home. I'm like, why? The only thing that they take are my handbags. My handbags and my engagement ring. And my engagement ring is very well hidden. So the only valuable thing that is in sight are my handbags. And if they took them, I mean, I don't actually use them anymore. I don't carry bags anymore.
Don't burgle Ayesha's house. But yeah.
Nothing in it to burgle. Because I don't buy stuff like that anymore. I mean, I do like nice shoes. That's the one thing I still spend on is shoes.
Yeah.
But otherwise, just doesn't interest me.
Yeah, and I feel like, realistically speaking, those of us who have worked in banking, like, you're earning enough to be able to enjoy your money and still, like, invest as well so that the money comes back to you. But I guess a lot of people just don't really.
No, and like, even for me, I didn't start investing until I got into property. And I'd say that that's still pretty late. So even before the property, I was in banking, earning well, but spending a lot and not investing up until that point. That's mad.
Yeah.
It's only when I started investing that I was like, okay, this isn't actually like, this is now making a lot more sense for me. And with hindsight, if I could go back, I would start investing as early as possible. Now I tell like all the women who come through Propelle, just invest, start as soon as possible. The power of compounding is incredible. You just have to start. Doesn't matter if you don't think you have a lot, you just have to start investing.
I hope you guys are enjoying this content. If you are, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. If you're committed to building wealth with no borders and want to invest in a property in the UK or in Dubai, feel free to send an email to lamideelizabeth@gmail.com and I'll be sure to help you. If you're not quite ready to invest yet, check out the affordable video courses down below that will teach you more about property investing and money management. And if you're thinking of relocating to Dubai, setting up your business, breaking into certain industries, getting a visa, check out the Professional Network. The link will be below. Just quickly before we go into talking about like why you left to start Propelle, I think working in banking, like I was saying, I think like the perception of bankers is like you're making all of this money, whatever. But you were working in wealth management. So I'm sure you would have seen people whose wealth is like nothing compared to, you know, what you were earning, right? Yep. What would you say is like some of the differences between, I guess, like your clients and your colleagues?
Okay, so being in wealth management was eye-opening. There is a whole different world out there that majority of people have no idea about.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have had any idea either if I hadn't been introduced to that world, because that's where my clients live. And it's insane. So like there are levels and then there are levels.
Yeah.
So again, going into banking initially, I was like, yeah, you know, all these people like senior bankers making so much money, et cetera, et cetera. When it came to clients, I mean, they could be making anywhere from tens of millions to hundreds of millions to billions. That level of wealth is just next level. And so for me, I think, again, another sort of reason into why I wanted to leave is, yes, I wanted to help people more, but I'll be honest, I also want to build wealth for myself. And some people might say to me, but you already have wealth. But we all have different goals and different levels that we're attaining for. And I'm not at the point of wealth that I want to be at. That said, the goalposts do keep changing. Like every time you get to a certain level, then you set a new one and you set a new one. But being around those kind of entrepreneurs.
So is that who they were, your clients, mainly entrepreneurs?
My clients were. So basically, when you go into wealth management, you can have whatever clients you want. They literally just say, like, here's your business card, desk and a phone, like, go and get whatever clients that you want to get. I think I did what a lot of new wealth advisors do. You go in, you get the rich list, you look at the top ones and you try to reach out to them or whatever. But what I realized is, what works really well is when you have a connection with your clients, because in order for them to give you a lot of money, and at Goldman, minimum account sizes are 10 million, right? So for somebody to give me at least 10 million, they're going to have to be able to trust me. You're not going to part with your hard-earned money if you don't trust the person. And so what I realized is it's much easier to build that connection with people that you can have something in common with. And these sort of older white men, you know, intergenerational wealth, like I didn't have anything in common with them. So I would start to go to some of these meetings. I'm like, yeah, this is just not going to work. We have nothing to talk about, like beyond the finances and the accounts. Like in terms of like connecting, we have nothing in common. So what I realized was a great market for me was entrepreneurs, because before they got their money, they were like me and you. But they had an idea, they built a business, they sold it successfully, and then they became incredibly wealthy. And in most cases, they still remembered who they were before. And so we connected on that level. Like even some of my Goldman clients now I'm still in touch with, and I say like we're actually friends because we just connected. But what it showed me was like just working with them for long periods of time, I'm like, I can do that. Like, you were like me, but now look at you. So it opened my eyes to, again, the possibilities, combined with, as I said, like what business school taught me. So business school kind of taught me that I can do this, have this belief in yourself. And then when I got to Goldman and I saw people who were like me actually doing it, I'm like, that's how you do it. And I'd look at that person or this person, that's how they did it. That's how they did it. That's how they did it. I'm like, I can do that. But I don't think I would have believed it enough if I hadn't seen it right in front of me.
Right.
And in terms of like their wealth, yeah, it's just next level. I remember one of my clients, I went to her house for a meeting and there was a guy in the lobby and he's like, yeah, go on in. So I go on in, I press the lift, I go up, I come out and I'm standing there and I'm like, well, where's her door? And then she just opens the door and comes out. And she's like, oh, come into the living room. I'm like, oh, the lift is in your house. Okay. I thought it was like the building and then I've got to go in the lift and then find your house. Oh, the whole thing is your house. Okay, I see. And this was around the corner from Bond Street Station. So prime location. And this is the sort of, and that wasn't even her main home. That's just her London home.
Oh my God.
So yeah, it really opened my eyes to a lot of things, and just the places that these people go, the parties they go to, the things that they do, it's just next level.
It's different. Because online, like, I see people having debates, yeah, and they think that, like, when there's, I don't know, conversations about, like, wealthy people and, like, tax increases and stuff, and these people, they're so pressed about, like, people who are making 80K plus. I'm like, these people are, like, closer to being broke than they are to being one of the richest people in society. But in general, the average person, like, they see wealth as like, oh, you're making 100K, oh my God, you must have so much money. Even those making $500,000 a year, compared to the people who are actually like the 1% within the 1%.
Yeah.
Where is 80K? It's nothing.
So everything is relative. Everything is relative. And I do try to remind myself that I'm in a bubble. My network is a bubble.
Yeah.
And it is not representative of majority of people in the country. And I do try to remind myself of that, because what I have been exposed to is the 0.1%, etc.
Right.
And it's easy to forget sometimes. So for example, like when in wealth management, if we're talking about like sums of money and things like this, we talk in the millions.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, she's got 25, he's got 10. And I remember I was having a conversation with my mum about something and I was like, oh yeah, it costs 3. And she's like, £3,000? Really? I was like, no, mother, 3 million. And then she's like, well, why didn't you say that? And then I remembered I had got so accustomed to speaking in millions.
Yeah.
Because that was what I was now used to. But to somebody like my mum, like, it's just very different. Like, I didn't tell my mum how much I earned. She still has no idea about the size of my property portfolio. She still doesn't have an idea, for example, of like how big I want to grow Propelle and the sums of money that I can potentially earn when I exit. It'll blow her mind. Like, it's just not her world.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for people to remember this. So, for example, I completely agree with you. When I, 100K salary, like for me personally, what the hell is that going to do? That's not going to do anything for my life. But to some people, it is a lot. And I even see this sometimes with employees that I have at Propelle, particularly like as I've been fundraising and things. And then I like share the journey with my team and I'd be like, oh yeah, I went to this meeting, like sat down with this person for, I don't know, an hour and they've given me 250K. And I'm like, oh, but it's so annoying. I should have asked for more or whatever. And I like one of my employees said to me, like, you just walked out of the meeting with £250,000 and you're just like it's nothing. And I'm like, yeah, but in the grand scheme of what I'm trying to do, it is nothing. But then she's like, but that's an obscene amount of money. And for her, it is.
Yeah.
And so I do have to remind myself that not everyone, and even the majority don't see what I see.
But I feel like for me, I want people to know that is not like it. Money is so much bigger than. I don't know. I just feel like if you're like, oh my God, 80K, oh my God, 100K, and you want to build wealth or you want to go beyond that, if that is your ceiling, how are you going to be able to like
100%,
get past
100%,
that?
totally agree with you. Because if you live in a world where 100K is like, oh my gosh, that's so much money, then you are consciously, subconsciously limiting yourself to that sort of level.
Yeah.
Because to you, anything else probably isn't even possible. You can't even comprehend it. So I totally get what you're saying in that you want people to understand the levels of wealth out there.
Right.
So that they can aspire to have more, that they can know it is reachable, that they can know it is achievable. And that's exactly what happened to me, right? If I hadn't have seen my clients and how they built their wealth and what they have, I probably wouldn't have thought it was possible for me. Like now when I think about Propelle and potentially what I can exit for, you know, like I have conversations with people and we're talking billions, like, and I am serious. But it's because of what I've seen and what I've been used to. I say the only thing though is there is this fine line between exposing people to something and then them feeling like it's kind of rubbed in their face, or it's sort of like that's how those people live and this is how I live and I don't have that and it's kind of not fair. Like I have seen that come up
Like
sometimes.
discouragement.
Or it's sort of like resentment. Oh, that's the other half. That's how they live. They have that. And so I find that people generally fall into two camps. If you do expose them to that sort of world, it's either like, oh my gosh, this is possible. That's so inspiring. I can try to work my way to get there myself. Or, oh yeah, that's them. You know, they have that. We don't. They're rich. They get.
They're exploiting people.
Exactly.
Blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's talk more about on this topic why you then decided to leave Goldman, which is where you left, and then start like Propelle.
It was a couple of things, all happened around the same time. I'm a massive believer in fate. I also believe in God. And there are definitely parts of my life where it wasn't even me. Like, clearly I was meant to go down a certain path and do something because it's like all the stars aligned, all the doors opened at once. And I'm like, it's just almost too much of a coincidence that all of these things just align at the same time. I'm like, clearly that is the path I'm meant to go down. It's almost like it was predestined. Well, that's kind of how I see it. So with Goldman, I'd been promoted, things were going well, and I started to sort of think, okay, what do the next 6 to 10 years look like? And then that's when I had the conversation with the senior guy, like, you've been here 25 years, why are you here? And I started to think about these things. I'd also got to the point where I was financially independent because I had the property portfolio. So I'm like, okay, I don't actually need to be here. So don't need the money. So that's no longer an incentive. But also I had that itch, you know, I think being around those clients who were starting businesses, who were changing the world, I was like, I can do that. I want to do that. And then the other thing was I was financially independent. So I was earning lots from the property portfolio that I didn't actually need my salary. And it's a really interesting thing that happens when you get to a point in life where you don't need the salary because it's no longer a motivating factor.
Yeah.
So there has to be something else to motivate you to make you want to do that thing. And I got to a point where I was getting up, I was dragging myself to work, I was going through the motions, but I was like, why? There's nothing motivating me to do this. I don't need the money. And then for some people, it's like the actual job that they do. And I thought about it. I'm like, what do? I make incredibly rich, predominantly white men richer. How is that helpful to the greater good? So that's not really motivating me either. And then I was like, there's nothing. And that was just for me personally. I'm like, I'm not really learning anymore. I can now build these investment portfolios with my eyes closed. So I'm not learning. Don't need the money. Not particularly inspired by the types of people generally that we were helping. So I was just like, this is not working. I can't keep dragging myself to work every day. Like, it's soul destroying. I need to do something where I have that spark in my step. Like, I want to get up. I want to go. I'm excited to go. And I did have that when I started Goldman. But when I got to that point, it had gone.
Yeah.
So I started to think about what I wanted to do with my life. I was like, well, I can't just lie in bed and Netflix all day. I like get bored after like a week. And so I said, right.
A week of Netflix to get bored?
Yeah, I'd be bored after a week.
Well, mine's like 3 hours.
Oh, no. Like at least a week. Oh my gosh, yeah, there is so much to watch. No,
Okay,
no, at least a week. I can easily do a week of nothing if I get bored.
Really? I think I can do a day on a good, like, I don't know, like the Ultimatum South Africa. That one was so good. I did that for like a whole day. But that's it.
Oh no. Okay, I'll tell you after. There's so many things on Netflix, like so many things.
Okay.
No, 100% I can do a week in bed with Netflix and be good. After a week, okay, I'm like, all right, I'm done. I need to like use my brain and do something now. And so I started to think about, okay, what do I want to do with my life? Like, I was in a fortunate enough position to be like, I can choose what I want to do with my life. And I totally understand for a lot of people, they don't have that because they have to work because they need the money. So I'm like, right, if I can do anything, what do I want to do? Impact is important to me. I wanted to have impact, but also leave a lasting legacy. My husband thinks I'm a bit mad. He's like, most people just, get up, have a job, have a family, be happy with that. Like, why do you want to leave something behind? And for me personally, it's like, I don't want to be on this earth and then leave. And then in a couple of generations, there's nothing. There's no one remembers you. So I'm like, I want to leave something behind that is here long after I'm gone. And as I said, have impact, but also purpose. Like, I genuinely feel that we're all here to have an impact and to try and make things better if you can. And if you have the ability to do that, then that's what you absolutely have to do. So when I started to put all of these things together, but also thinking about what I liked and what my skill sets were and what I was good at, I was like, okay, so I'm clearly good at helping people build wealth, or Goldman think I am. I like that. But I need to work with a group of people where I'm actually having an impact and making a difference for them. So like with some of my clients, okay, yes, say I made him 20 million in a year. What's he going to do? Like get a bigger boat? Like how useful is that?
Yeah.
So at least if I'm helping people to build wealth where it's making a meaningful impact on their life, like that aligns with me and my values. And then also it was just so obvious to me, because we had so few female clients, that there was a gap in the market and that nobody was doing things for women to help women invest and build wealth. And then when I started to look at the data, it was like the gender investment gap in the UK is 1.65 trillion pounds. Insane. That's the amount that is either in cash that's not being invested, or investments that women aren't making that men are. And then the gender pension gap was 40%. So like double the pay gap. But again, no one's talking about it. And I'm like, why? Like as women, why? Like it's always us that get screwed, or we're always the ones that are behind in some way, and usually not through any fault of our own. So for me, I was like, right, that is what I want to do. Something around that. I didn't even have it fully fleshed out. I was like, something to do with helping women to build wealth. And initially I was like, do I focus on property because that's how I built my own wealth? Or do I focus it more broadly on other asset classes because that's how I help people build wealth at Goldman? But at that point, I was like, in order to be able to get the brain space that I need to think this through properly, I'm going to have to leave. Because when you're in a full-time demanding job, and at that time, then I'd had kids, like it's difficult to get the brain space to think. So I left. I was on maternity leave. I left and started to think about what it is that I wanted to do. And initially, and I think this is how we met actually. So I was running events where I was talking to people about property investing and how that they can do it and how they can build wealth. And Propelle actually came out of that because I found a lot of women were coming to me saying, oh, like, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that in terms of their wealth building? And so then I started to run events just for women. And then eventually what happened is they would say, okay, so I've come to all your events and you've been helping me like get more confident. Like I'm ready to start investing now. Here, take my money. And literally there were some women who's like, okay, can I have your bank details? Like, how do I wire the money to you? I'm like, no, you don't send me the money. Like, I'm not a wealth advisor anymore. I'm not FCA regulated. Go and use one of the many investment platforms out there and start investing. Like, property stuff, obviously you do that separately. But like, if you want to invest in an ISA or things like this, there are so many platforms out there. And then what they would say is, oh no, but I don't want to use that platform. And I don't like this one because of this. And I don't like this one because of this. And I heard that so often, it was like a light bulb moment in my head. I was like, hold on a second. These women are now ready to invest. There are so many platforms out there, but they don't want to use them. This is interesting. And that was the sort of moment for me. If I build a platform for women that helps them overcome the hurdles that they say they face with investing generally, but also with these existing platforms, then we should be able to get them investing. And it's at a period of time where women are getting more wealth. We're going through something called the Great Wealth Transfer at the moment, where women are going to be amassing wealth at an accelerating rate. So they say by next year in the UK, 60% of UK wealth is going to be controlled by women, and that over the next decade, I think there's something like 90 trillion or something like that globally that's going to be passing to women. So I'm like, okay, women do want to invest if you give them the right things to help them, and they're going to be amassing wealth. Like, it's like a no-brainer that there should be a platform or somewhere where they can go to actually invest that money in a way that they feel confident and happy. So I was like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to build a platform, get the FCA regulation, raise the funding, do all of this stuff. And I remember at the time, it was just like, yeah, how hard can it be? And I remember going to my husband and saying, oh, so I have this idea now. Like, this community groups that I've been running, I'm actually going to stop doing that and build a regulated platform. And I remember saying, okay, right, so I need to fundraise and raise money for this so I can hire engineers and actually build it out. And I was pregnant with my second daughter at the time. And he's like, but you're 9 months pregnant. Like, your due date is in a few weeks. Like, how are you going to fundraise and have a newborn with your other child? And I was like, don't worry. Don't worry, I'll figure it out. How hard can it be? Like, oh my God, with hindsight, it was insane. But that's who I am. That's what I do. I decide I'm going to do something. It doesn't matter if it's hard. I will figure it out and I will get to the other side.
So Propelle is an app where women can go to get financial education.
So we have 3 pillars: financial education, community, and then investment. So on the financial education side, it's about helping women to build confidence. Because a lot of women said to us oh, I'm not sure what to do. I don't know where to go. I'm not sure about this, that, and the other. A lot of times they do know, but they just kind of need that reassurance. Sometimes they genuinely don't know and then they're learning, which is fine. On the community side, a lot of women told us that they found investing quite lonely, and that they wanted to be part of something and they wanted to meet other women who were doing different things to get ideas. So community is a really big part of what we do as well. Okay. And then on the final side, then they need an investment platform. They need somewhere where they can go that resonates with them, that, for example, they can quite easily find out what the fees are. Or what women said to us is, oh, when I go to XYZ platform and I try to create an account, it asks me what my risk tolerance is, low, medium, or high. Well, what the hell does low mean? What does medium mean? And when I was getting told these things and then I look back at these platforms, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're so right. If you haven't come from the industry, how the hell are you supposed to know what that means? So it's almost like, I think a lot of these platforms were built by people who did have the knowledge. So they're not even thinking about the questions that people who don't come from the industry would be asking, which is why some of them aren't intuitive. So on our side, our investment platform is designed to be super user-friendly, super easy to use, not because women are silly, but because they're busy, they don't have a lot of time, and if they do decide that they want to do something, then they need to get it done quickly. And at the moment we have, on the investment side, we work with big fund managers like Vanguard, BlackRock, HSBC. And there's lots of new stuff coming. I absolutely love it, coming up with new tools, features and products. So yeah, sky is the limit, really.
I love that. I will leave the link if you guys want to download Propelle in the description box or in the podcast show notes. So you could definitely go and download the app through there. So we're just going to move into the Wealth Woe segment of the podcast. And this is where one of the listeners sends in their dilemma and they just want to get your advice. Okay,
Sure.
so let me read. So this says, I, 25-year-old female, co-founded a company as the operational partner, worked 5 days a week with no pay for 3 years, and my share is only 15%. The majority co-founders are married and in their 40s. They have only contributed capital and given minimal guidance. I have been unhappy this whole time, but can't seem to leave. What should I do? So I thought you'd be a good person to talk about this, given you also have a startup. So
Yep.
what do you think?
It's a difficult one, and I think there are quite a few considerations that she needs to think about. So on the face of it, having a 15% stake in a company that you didn't found is actually quite decent.
Okay.
That said, I totally understand the frustration if, you know, she's working all the hours, putting blood, sweat and tears in, and then the co-founders aren't, and they have a lot more equity. It just doesn't seem fair. So I think in that case, there's a couple of things. Even though she's unhappy, is there a potential exit that's going to come anytime soon, in which case she'll actually be able to monetize her 15% and then, you know, get compensated for all the hard work and effort that she's put in? If an exit is like so far into the future that she doesn't really have an idea of where it's going to come from, then obviously she needs to change something now, because it just does not work, particularly in a startup. If you're chronically unhappy, you won't be able to survive. So what I would say would be to go to the co-founders and sort of just have a chat with them if she does have that kind of relationship, and sort of say, look, I've been doing X, Y, Z and I have 15%. I'd really like you guys to step in a bit more and do whatever, or increase my equity. And I'm happy to keep doing what I'm doing, but then it needs to be a bit more commensurate. So I think it will really depend on the relationship that she has with them, and then how close to an exit she is. Like, if she feels an exit is going to happen within the next year or two, then I'd say maybe just suck it up and wait to get paid.
Could you do 3 years, 5 days a week, no pay?
It depends. Again, if there was an exit coming and that payday could be huge, then yes. But she's got to add up the math, right? What money has she been foregoing? And is what she expects to get out, does that compensate her enough? And also, what is the probability of that exit happening, right? Because let's face it, most startups fail. So she's got to factor all of those things in, but only she'll have that level of insight into the business. But I mean, what's the alternative? She walks away, but then all that time, effort and energy that she's put in over that time then would almost be for nothing. So it's hard. It's a hard one.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, I wouldn't know so I asked you, because I wouldn't even know what to advise. But like, if I felt like, because she's saying that they're giving minimal guidance, if I felt like I was doing the brunt of the work, and they're just, I don't know, they're holding all the equity, I'm not even getting paid, I'm working 5 days a week, bruh, I don't know.
But I think they're also putting money in as well, right?
Oh, true.
And although it's potentially easy for them to just put money in, let's say they have a lot of it, like that means a lot.
True.
Like when you're running a startup, if you can't find funding, you have no business. So even though she in theory could have gone away and like done the work in a business of her own, would she have been able to find the funding?
And this is why I had to ask you. I think that's
I get it. Like I have investors in Propelle that I'm like, they own quite a bit, like relatively speaking. I'm like, that's a lot of equity that they own, and they don't do anything, but then they provided the money.
Yeah.
And that's really important.
Yeah. So we are going to wrap up with some quick fire money questions.
Okay.
So the first question is, what is the best investment you've ever made?
Ooh, best investment. This changes over time. But as a lot of people know, I invest in property, but I also invest in startups. There is a startup investment that I made probably a year ago. They are absolutely flying.
Is it?
They are absolutely flying. I have been like calculating. I've got an Excel spreadsheet. I'm like, this is how much money I put in. If they exit at like, you know, $250 million, this is how much I'm going to get. If they exit at $500 million, this is what I'm going to get. If they exit at $1 billion, this is what I'm going to get. And then when I'm doing those walks around Primrose Hill and I'm looking at the houses, I'm like, that's where the money's coming from.
Is it a UK founded company?
Yeah, all but one of my investments are UK.
Okay.
There's one that I made literally like 3 weeks ago that's US, or they are UK based, but they're moving to the US. So I invested in the US entity. But normally I don't do that. Normally I only invest in UK. So right now, that is my best investment. If you'd asked me this like before I'd made that, I probably would have picked one of my property ones.
I thought you were going to say your MBA.
Actually, but you know what? Because when you said investment, I automatically thought like money,
But that's good too, though.
monetary.
I like the practical
But if I
stuff.
think of an investment that's not like I put money into this thing, MBA for sure. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. The other thing that came to my head was my husband. But then I thought about it like it's obviously not transactional,
Yeah.
but
It's still an investment, though.
oh my gosh, a marriage is an investment. Yes.
Yeah.
Like next year I'd be married for 10 years. It is absolutely
Wow.
an investment. But we work so well.
Oh.
We work really, really well, even in the sense of when we're arguing or debating something, it's good because then we're debating all aspects of the thing. So yeah, because when you sort of mentioned the MBA, I thought about, okay, what are the things that have really impacted my life that I've put sort of time in and it's not just a money thing. So I'd say, yeah, the MBA, my husband. Yeah.
Okay. I like that. What is the biggest money mistake you've made?
Many. Many. Okay, biggest money mistake. Let me think about the two biggest in terms of financial. So when I first started angel investing, this is like years and years ago now, didn't know what I was doing. First angel investment, put 80K into a startup. Stupid thing to do. But I was like, yeah, they have a great idea. Let's give them 80K. Why not? It crashed and burned. We got some of the money back because it was SEIS eligible, but I did very little due diligence. I didn't know what due diligence to do in startups at that point. That was crazy. Why would you give 80K to two guys that you don't know that well? And like they've never run a business before. Like it was a crazy thing to do.
Yeah.
So that one, I have made another investment where I lost 50K, but that wasn't because I didn't do enough due diligence. That was because of something else. The investment thesis was right. The due diligence I did was right. There were just outside circumstances that just meant that it didn't work. But actually, if I had the same information again, I would do it again because that was actually the right call, even though I did end up losing 50 grand. And I didn't get any of that back. So yeah, those two I'd say.
Okay. And then lastly, what is one piece of advice you'd give to someone who is trying to build wealth?
Have a plan. You have to have a plan and you have to have a strategy. If you don't have a plan, how do you know where you're trying to get to? It's kind of like when you get in a car and if you've never been there before, you need a map. So you go into Google Maps or Waze or whatever you use and you follow the map. Investing is exactly the same. You need to know where you're going. So you need to set your goals. You need to quantify your goals so that you have a target amount that you know you need to reach. And when you reach it, set a new goal, but you need to have a target amount. Then you need to back calculate and work out the types of investments that you need to be making in order to reach that goal. So let's say, I don't know, you pick a goal, you quantify it, and you need to be making 10% a year, or you're making 50% a year, 100% a year, whatever it is. You then know you need to be looking for deals or investment opportunities that give you that type of return to allow you to get to your goal. What I see so many people do is sort of say, okay, right, here's my goal. That's where I'm going. Oftentimes they don't even quantify it. And then like, yeah, my money's mostly in cash and a little bit in this. Well, obviously you're not going to reach your goal because the returns that you're getting here are way less than what you need to be getting.
Right.
And sometimes people say they have no idea how to calculate all of this stuff. So we've actually built some tools in Propelle that will help you calculate all of these things.
Love that.
They're supposed to be released this year. If not, it will be early in the new year. So whether it's Propelle or other places, there are tools that you can actually use to help you do this. And then sometimes you'll find that even investing what you have isn't even enough to get you there. So then you got to get creative. Okay, do I need to get another job? Do I need to do a side hustle? Do I need to start investing in riskier things that have higher returns to help me get there? But that risk tolerance still needs to be suitable to you. Yeah, you need to factor in all those things and you need to map it out and have a plan. And at least on paper, your plan should be able to get you there. In reality, life happens and there will be deviations. But if you don't have an idea of the direction you're going in and how you're going to get there, then you're never going to get there.
I love that. And that is a beautiful way to sum up the podcast. Where can they find you, or, if they want to learn more about Propelle, where did they go?
So we are mainly on Instagram. So, well, first of all, with Propelle, we obviously have an app, as you mentioned. And there's so much content and tools and various other things in there. In addition to that, we're on Instagram. So Propelle has its own Instagram page. I have my own Instagram page. So for Propelle, it's just at Propelle. And for me, I think it's at Ayesha.Ofori or Ayesha Ofori. And then I'm also on LinkedIn as well. I know some people are like, oh, LinkedIn is just professional. But going back to what I said earlier about building those networks, LinkedIn is powerful. You can find everyone on LinkedIn. So yeah, Instagram, LinkedIn, or the app.
Yep. Okay. Anything else?
No, I think that's it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank
this has been great.